Alright, so I've painted up the gear base. Like I mentioned, I paint the inside of this piece and the bay before I put that piece on, just for ease of access. This piece inserted in okay. I had to glue it two parts. I glued here, clamped it. When that was dry, I glued the other end and clamped it down because this piece wanted to sit out. It's flush, but there's a bit of a gap, so I might have to put some putty in that. Put the flaps on. I've still got to clean up the seam line on that intake section and on the nose here. So before I glue, there's a whole heap of like the navigation lights and antenna and stuff got to go on, small parts underneath on top. I clean up the seams before I do that. So I've tail's just about done, so I took that piece off for the block 25, sanded it down. I've sanded that pin I put in there. I just got to give it a shot of primer and it should be alright. I've put antenna blade in there and the light's masked with that Mr. Masking Sol R to protect it from paint. Again, I'm not putting the tail on yet till I clean up the seams. I've made up the drop tanks. When I first started, I did the weapons, but I didn't do the drop tanks. These are the wing tanks. So there's no belly tank. I'm putting that pod in the belly. I've put the main wheels together. I've done the nose wheels as well, but the wheels, mind your instructions, because there's like 3 sets of wheels in the kit with different hubs, and depending on which block you're doing as to what hubs they are. So these are the ones for the block 25. Same as the gear. So these parts are for the starboard gear, main gear. These two are universal, but the door, even the doors are different to the block 25 and the 42. The panels in them are different. These are different. They're different, I think, and the main gear leg is different to each block. So I have to glue this part will go on the main gear, and I've got to glue a light on. So again, mind your instructions as to which version you're doing so that you get it right. Okay, that's that light glued onto the leg. There's no tab or anything that locates that light. It just rests on the leg, so you just glue it onto the leg, which is a bit odd, but that's the way it is. So we got our nose section. If you wanted to, you could display your nose cone open with the radar. I'm not sure how. Let me grab this. So you got, that's part of your interior of the nose and your radar, and that's the radar. As to how good a detail it is, I don't know. I'm not displaying it open because I think it ruins the lines, the sleek line of the F-16. It looks better all in one. That would be good if you're doing like it's in maintenance display type thing, but yeah, I want to keep the line of the aircraft going. I'm not a fan of the 2-piece nose, but again, that's how it is. I didn't break that one off for a change. That was broken when I opened up the kit, so it's broken off in transit, so the little piece of rod on there later on. I'm not up to this stage yet, but I'm pointing out that canopies in the F-16 kits from Kinetic have a center seam line. It's only small, but it still needs to be, it's probably not going to show for a reflection. It's only small, but it still needs to be taken care of, so that's a sand and polish and dip and clear job. Even the windscreen section has one, which needs to be taken care of as well. Alright, so I've sprayed the engine exterior, and for this I've used Mr. Metal Colour Dark Iron. This paint is buffable, so when you airbrush it on, it looks pretty drab, but when you come in, you can keep polishing it up to your desired effect. I love the finish it gives, and with your recessed parts you give it a bit of a polish, but you can keep it a bit dirty looking and it adds to the effect. So just keep polishing up to how you want it. But I use I have a airbrush. It's just like a cheap airbrush. I think it's might even be a 0.6 needle. That airbrush is just for paints like this, or if I want to spray a enamel wash over something. I don't use my good airbrush for this. If you do, make sure you clean it out well, because this is really heavy in pigment. I think you can hand brush it on, but it works. I think it works better if you airbrush it on. So I'm gonna polish that up, and then I'll mask that off, then put the tail on. The other thing is with this, it keeps on giving. Even though I've polished that, you'll still get some pigment off it, so just be aware of it when you're handling it. I've also made up the ejection seat, and I had a look on some images. I made up, there's no harnesses in the kit, I've made up harnesses with aluminium foil tape, and that might look weird and wonderful, but I just found an image of an ejection seat with the harnesses sitting up, folded up. So I'm just doing that for something different, so I can paint that seat up now, and then it can go in to the cockpit. Alright, so I've done a bit more work. I've added most of the exterior parts to the fuselage that need to go on. I painted up the ejection seat. I just need to give it a clear coat and probably give it a bit of a wash to highlight that side detail. I've got the instrument combing in and the HUD. As mentioned, I think earlier I mentioned that there's two types, Block 25s different. I put in the mechanism for the canopy at the rear there. I've put in these clear parts. I'm not 100% sure if they're actually lights, but I've painted silver inside, and the center of that part I've masked. I've tried to look at images online, and some images it looks like they are a light, but I may be wrong. I've put the launchers on the wingtips. There's two types in the kit. I'm putting the AIM 9s on the wingtip, and that's the launcher type for that. If you're putting other missiles on, there's a different launcher. I put the nav lights on the intakes and masked off the part where it'll be coloured. This light here, there was a call out for part G10, which is a clear part, and I tried putting that part in and it wouldn't fit, and it sits too proud, like didn't look right. It should be flush as far as I'm concerned. I found another light or clear part on that sprue. I'm pretty sure that was G15 and it seemed to fit in there good, so I've put that in there. If that's wrong, so be it. Looks better than the other one. The other one just didn't look right to me. I put these little stabilizers in. They fit good because the attachment points I got molding into the fuselage where they sit, so they just sit in the right spot, and you just glue them. Rest the hook, that antenna on, and there's another little antenna there, and obviously I've put the tail on. The tail, it's not too bad after it was glued, but where the locating pins are on the tail, there's a bit of a gap where they touch the fuselage. I think it's because when it's injected, that area sits down a bit more than the rest of it. I tried cutting away a bit from the pin to try and make it more flush, but it didn't really work, so I'm going to need to put a bit of putty just around the rear there. You can see that side's got a bit more gap. I'm almost ready. Well, I got the nose cleaned up, I can put it on, and I'm going to look at putting some nose weight in. Like your main gear sits here, you just do a bit of a balance there, and it wants to sit back, so instructions don't say how much weight, just work it out yourself, I guess. Put some in and see how it balances. Once like you got the weapons and tanks sit on too, some of them are a bit behind the main gear, so they might also pull it back, so allow enough to keep it nose down, so you end up with a tail sitter.